Hey, welcome to the end of the year 2024 How to Podcast series. It's Dave, the Daily Dave, where we get together and talk podcasting in short little episode tidbits and bite-sized pieces to help you in your podcast journey. Welcome to the How to Podcast series, howtopodcast.ca. My name is Dave, and I just want to wrap up the year in style and put something in front of you that we might not be thinking about with all the gift giving and planning big meals and ending your podcast in 2024 and getting ready for the new year. Some things might slip through the cracks that I want you to think about as you wrap up 2024 and prepare for the new year. Just some things to put in front of you, to reminders, gentle nudge to consider these things as you wrap up 2024. I know one of the things I'm really focused on is looking at my credit card statements for all the months of 2024, looking at anything that I can purge, any subscriptions, monthly fees, that editing tool that you signed up for that you never used, your website domains, your anything that you've set up on your credit card. Take a look at your statements. Go online. If you're old like me, print them off, go through them line by line, and make sure that everything that you want to keep going into 2025, you keep as well. Usually at the end of the year is when we have our recurring yearly upgrades or renewals. So keep that in mind. You might get a big fancy charge to your credit card this time of year. So make sure that if you're going to renew for 2025, you look at it now, so these don't sneak under the radar and you're like, oh no. So for me, example, I had 2 Canva accounts and it's like $150 roughly each. So it's $300, right? And I forgot last year to cancel one of the 2. And they both went through. And I hardly used the second Canva account at all in 2024. It's a complete waste of $150. So as you look towards your statements, look at your yearly renewals, look at your monthly renewals, and maybe do some purging. You know, like that, again, that tool that you bought, that subscription you got, and you never, ever use it. Maybe it's time to cut the cord and get rid of that. Just chop it off. No longer need that in your life, and free up some income and free up some expenses that you've had in 2024. So beyond just looking at your credit card, what else can we think about as we wrap up 2024 and get ready for the new year? What else should we kind of have in mind as we go through the process of looking at the new year? So there's some other things I want to talk about here as well. We'll jump into that right here. This is the perfect time of year for you to do some review. How did your podcast do in 2024? Have you actually looked at your stats and did like a deep dive on what's going on in your podcast? Like, how many countries are you in? How long are people listening to your episodes for? What have you seen? Have you seen some trends? Is your podcast getting better, like episode to episode, month to month? Are you seeing some growth? Has your community grown? Has the amount of people reaching out to you through email, SpeakPipe, Buy Me a Coffee, has that grown over 2024? And I'd like for you to kind of do some review of your analytics. I'm not saying hyper-focused on your analytics, but understanding what's been going on behind the scenes of your podcast. Maybe some things worked and you don't know they worked. Maybe some things didn't work and you're completely oblivious because you've never really looked very intently at your analytics. So this is the perfect time. Grab your analytics and do some review. Compare last year to this year, last December to this December, last week to a year ago last week, and just kind of see, where are you? Are you doing more frequent podcast episodes? Are you doing them more often? Are your podcast getting longer or shorter? Again, that retention rate, that's how long people listen to your podcast. Is it getting longer? Like, are people listening to your podcast for a longer portion of the podcast, or is it shrinking? Is your podcast too long, too short, too frequent, too infrequent? It's a great time to even think about creating a podcast poll or a questionnaire that you can put out in front of your audience to get some feedback on your show. It's a great time of year to review what's working well in your show and maybe what needs to be improved. And if you're like, I have no idea, no one's ever given me any feedback on my show, that's what I do. I love to sit down with podcasters and go through your podcast together. We can pull up your stats on your screen and walk through this together, so you're not trying to make sense of this on your own. Gladly would help you with that in 2025 and here at the end of the year. If you want to reach out, howtopodcast.ca. Let's do that. And analyze your audience engagement metrics, like how many people are commenting on your podcast, responding to your questions, again, your speak pipes, your buy me a coffees. Let's look at that. Let's see where we're at and maybe where we can improve in 2025, and identify the content that really resonated the most with your audience this year, and maybe do more of that in 2025. Look at as well your financial housekeeping, review your monthly credit card charges, assess any renews that are happening yearly that are going to renew right about this time of the year. Don't be caught off guard by that. And determining your marketing and content production budget, if you have one, for this upcoming year. How much money do you want to put into your show in 2025? Beyond hiring an editor, which I do, by the way, you can hire me and I'll do all the work behind the scenes for you. Or as far as marketing your show, maybe getting an ad for your show or getting featured in somebody's newsletter. Do you have any money that you can set aside in 2025 to boost your awareness of your show to an audience that doesn't know you yet? This is the time of year to start planning for what could be a great new year for you in your podcast. So where is your financial housekeeping right now for your show? It's a good time to think about it here at the end of the year. One thing I do with podcasters, and I love doing this, is kind of planning out the new year of content. Planning out what you're going to talk about in 2025. And getting a plan, because a lot of podcasters podcast with no plan at all. They show up week to week, episode to episode, going, what am I even going to talk about? And they don't have a long-term goal for their show. So I'm thinking for me, for example, in one of my shows, I'm going to focus on October of 2025 is going to be Barktober. Barktober being a dog. Barktober. And what I want to do is raise money through my podcast for my local animal shelter. Here we call them humane societies in Canada, but to raise money. And what I would love to do with gifts from you in October of 2025 is pool together all the donations that come through my Buy Me a Coffee in the month of October and donate them to my local shelter, animal shelter. And I want to sponsor at least one adoption from you. You're going to help me pay for an adoption so that somebody who can't afford the full price of adopting a pet can walk in and know that this pet has already been prepaid for because of you, that this person can take this dog to a loving home, this cat to a loving home, this pet, because of your donations. So I want to go and prepay for that animal to be adopted because of you. And that's going to be Barktober. So I already know that at the end of December of 2024, that in October 2025, I'm going to use that as my Barktober shelter animal donation focus, leveraging my Buy Me a Coffee. I already know that. So I'm going to be thinking about that and working towards that, preparing guests, maybe have somebody on from the animal shelter on my podcast. Talk about, the fact that we should use our podcast to raise money for charities that mean something to us personally, because then our audience gets to know us better. And I am already pre-planning October's content in 2025 here at the end of 2024 in the month of December. That's what it means to have a content calendar. That's what it means to have a goal. So my challenge to you at the end of this year is to take some time over the holiday season, however you celebrate, and look at your calendar for 2025 and get a high-level view of where you want to go in your show. And start now so that you're not going so aimlessly week to week, episode to episode, just not sure what to talk about next. You already have a clear plan. And if you need help with this, again, howtopodcast.ca. I have time over the Christmas holidays. I'd love to sit down with you, share a cup of coffee online, and go over your calendar and kind of give you some parameters, some thoughts, maybe some suggestions specific to your show on how you can pre-plan for 2025. I'd love to do that with you. Links in the calendar, on my website, and also in the show notes. Reach out to me. Let's have a conversation. Love to do that with you. Consider planning out maybe some seasonal themes for your podcast. So if you have a dating and relationship podcast, February is typically Valentine's Day, and it's time where people are kind of in that lovey-dovey mood, right? Because it's cold and horrible outside, and maybe your podcast could have a really great loving couples or relationship-themed Valentine's month, and build your content now in preparation for February. Why not plan that out? If you have a dad's podcast or a mom's podcast, you have Father's Day, Mother's Day, then what are your plans now for that? How can you get a guest? How can you get a focus? How can a book? How can you do an event? How can you do fundraising? Something, right? You can plan in advance for any of these seasonal calendar events that are pretty universal. Think about October, November being Thanksgiving and gratitude and being grateful for your community, being grateful for your listeners, being grateful for life and having people share their gratitude stories on your podcast. Start planning that now. And in December for next fall, you can start working in advance. And then all you have to do is fill in the gaps for a non-seasonal weekly episode that doesn't really fit anything that's happening within that month. Or, fill in the gaps with whatever you need to build out your episodes in advance. So start looking at your content calendar now and start planning and prepare contents for the first 2 weeks in January in advance. Start that now and have that ready so you have a little bit of gap leading into the new year by just planning ahead with your content. So what if you want to start, for example, some additional content over and above your podcast? Maybe start that now. What about a newsletter? So you're going to start collecting emails. You're going to create a newsletter maybe once a month. That's 12 in a year. That's not bad. Or twice a month. You're 24, right? You don't have to do it daily or weekly. You can do it whatever you want. But maybe start writing your newsletters in advance. And again, think of the seasonality. Think of creating a draft for each of the months. Say you're going to do 12, one for every month, and start adding the bones to that newsletter now, and then start adding the pieces to it as you do it. But create the outline and go through and create a newsletter. And if you're not sure where to start, go to a content creator that you admire, and if they have a newsletter, sign up for theirs. Get theirs and look at it from an objective point of view and go, I like this and I don't like this. I want to swap this out and add this, and make it your own, but use their framework as a starting point for your newsletter. So you're not starting with a blank piece of paper. Just go to your favorite creator, sign up for their new email newsletter, and then just follow along on their journey and just kind of copy what they're doing and what you love and adapt it for your audience. Okay? That's a great starting point. You're not starting with nothing. So start your newsletter, start your YouTube channel, start your social media, add a new social media platform that you're curious about. Now's the time to start working on that now and try new things. It's a great opportunity to do that over the Christmas holiday break, and I would encourage you to do that. Think about your adjacent content over above your actual recording episodes. And what does that look like? And what can you add in 2025? That's an easy lift if you do it in advance and prepare. Think about your content creation in addition to your show for 2025. What are some other additional recommendations to think about for 2025 as we wrap up this year? Keep a journal or a notes app to capture spontaneous content ideas throughout the year of 2025. Be flexible with your content plan while maintaining a strategic framework for your show. You need to have some idea where you're going with your podcast in 2025, and consider some personal events and maybe potential time constraints when scheduling your content. Think about how you can get out there into the world, how you can reach out in real life, either on like a meetup, what I do on For How to Podcast or meetup.com, or in person at a podcast conference, or a conference that's adjacent to your content. So if you're in the health and fitness space, you should be at a health and fitness event or conference. You should put that in your calendar and you should attend and talk about your podcast to your ideal audience. Think about what you can do this year that you haven't done before and put it into the calendar. Start researching now. Start saving up your money to attend these events so that when it comes, you're ready. It's not a high stress thing. The money is there. The finances have been in place because you planned for this. We run on such a disjointed, unplanned structure in our life where we just jump from shiny thing to shiny thing and we never really complete anything. And I'm challenging you to have a plan for 2025. So as we wrap up 2024, if this is your first time here, thank you for listening to the podcast. But if you've been here for more than one episode, we're already best friends, all right? And we already have a relationship. And I'm grateful for every single play that's happened on this podcast in 2024. Where 160 plus countries have pressed play on this show in 2024, which is outstanding and a little intimidating, but super exciting to know that someone has found value in the show. And the fact that you're still here and that you find value in this content means the world to me. And my goal in 2025 is to meet as many of you as possible. So I would love to chat with you. I have nothing to sell you. I have nothing to strong arm you to buy. I don't have a book or a program or nothing yet, maybe someday, but I would just love to meet you and just have a conversation. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the show. I'd love to hear about your show. I'd love to meet you. I'd love to see your face on a Zoom call. And again, no stress, no sales, just you and I. And in 2025, my goal is to meet you. I would love to meet you. So please, you can reach me through my website. You can reach me through the link in the show notes attached to this episode. And it's there for you, completely free, so we can get together and talk about you, meet each other, and celebrate your podcast together. I want you to know that you have great things ahead of you in 2025. And if I could be a small piece of that, or your cheerleader, or your support, anything to do to help you on that goal, to reach your audience and share your message, I'm here for you. And I can't wait to meet you and see what we can do together in 2025 for your podcast. Thank you for listening. Happy holidays. Enjoy your family. Enjoy a break from your show. And just love on your family. And just be there in community. And if you're away from home and far from family, then reach out to somebody who is also missing their family this time of year and create memories with that person so that no one is alone over this holiday season. And however you celebrate, enjoy time with family, friends, and enjoy a downtime and take care of yourself. I want you to be healthy and strong going into 2025. I truly appreciate every listen, and I truly appreciate the fact that you decided to press play on this podcast. Thank you for listening to the How to Podcast series, the Daily Daves, and everything. All the best to you in 2025. Take care. From my family to yours, happy holidays. Cheers.